I'm sure you remember the days in early to mid 2000s when some player contracts started to creep up the 9-digit mark. Enter the Amnesty clause. It provided franchises a means of escaping a contractual obligation to a player whose performance falls far short of the extremely large salary they initially agreed to pay him. Every team could release one player without his contract counting towards the luxury tax. The players still got paid, but the teams got more flexibility to build a roster, and in the history of the league there have been two such amnesty periods, in 2005 and 2011. Both a little bit different, but first let's look at the Amnesty Clause 2005. Which players were waived under this clause and what happened to them after it? Vin Baker was once a very good basketball player. He had 2 double-double seasons in the first 4 years of his career. In the first 5 years of his career, he was already a 4-time All-Star. He was earning big bucks now. The problem is, by the time he got to Boston, he was already 32, he was out of shape, had alcohol problems, and not worth the money he was supposed to get. The Celtics eventually released him and then the Knicks signed him. Obviously, who else? He was bad with the Knicks, so he was traded to Houston. He was released from the Rockets and signed with the Clippers, where he played the last 8 games of his NBA career. Somewhere during his team journey, Boston realized, hey, we can use the amnesty clause on him even though he doesn't play us for anymore. They did and saved some money on tax obligations. Vin Baker retired after the 2006 NBA season and now is an assistant coach for the Bucks and a one-time NBA champion as a coach. Eddie Robinson. Robinson came to the NBA as an undrafted free agent. He signed with the Charlotte Hornets. At 6'8" and 210 pounds, he was primarily known for his athleticism. He averaged 7.4 points and 3 rebounds, and that somehow caught an eye of then Bulls GM Jerry Krause, who decided to give him a 5-year, $30 million contract. In 2 years with the Bulls, Robinson didn't improve at all, and with the changes in Bulls front office, it was decided to use this amnesty clause to release Robinson. He never played again in the NBA. Michael Finley was once a very integral part of the Dallas Mavericks. In his first year in Dallas, he led the team in scoring, assists, and steals. Along with Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki, they were quite a trio. Shortly after his first All-Star appearance in 2000, he started earning double-figure salary. He followed that up with another All-Star appearance in 2001, and then, as he entered his 30s, he gradually started to decline. He started to play more of a supporting role, but still was getting the big money, so the Mavericks decided to waive him. His 2005 salary was $14.6 million, quite a dough back then. After the release from Mavericks, Finley signed with the Spurs, where he was a secondary role player but won a championship in 2007. After 5 years with the Spurs, he was waived and went on to sign with the Celtics, where he played just 21 games before calling it a career. Now, Finley is back in Dallas as the Vice President of Basketball Operations for the Mavericks. Derek Coleman. Oh, the trouble child. In my opinion, he was on the path of a Hall of Fame career, if not for his demons. The former first overall pick of the 1990 NBA Draft, won Rookie of the Year, spent 5 seasons with the Nets, was a one-time All-Star, and had 4 double-double seasons. That was in the first half of the 1990s. By 2005, he was already 37 years old, averaging just 1.8 points and 3 rebounds, but still earning a cool $4.5 million. That salary and other stuff were the catalysts in Pistons releasing him. He never played in the NBA again. Clarence Weatherspoon was once a promising small forward for the Sixers. Then, in just 5 years, with a steady decline, he became a role player and changed 4 teams in 3 years. For the final bag of his career, he signed with the New York Knicks. Who else, right? A player who was averaging 7 and 7 earned a cool $5.9 million. He was traded to Houston, where he played just 40 games before being waived under Amnesty clause. He never played again and now is an assistant coach at Southern Mississippi University. Reggie Miller, probably the best known player on this list. There is no reason to list all Reggie's accomplishments here. I'll keep it short. Miller retired while still in his contract, so the Pacers waived his contract under the amnesty clause to save $6 million in luxury tax costs. Brian Grant was a role player pretty much his whole career. He was a good role player, a tenacious rebounder, and a very good defender. In 2004, in a trade that landed Miami Shaquille O'Neal, he went the other way, to Los Angeles. His 3.8 points and 3.7 rebounds weren't worth the $13.3 million salary he was earning, so the Lakers waived him after the 2004-2005 season. After that, Grant played just one more season in the NBA, 21 games for the Phoenix Suns. Troy Bell. Now there's a full NBA life cycle. He was drafted in the first round, never played for the team that drafted him, was traded to Memphis, released via the amnesty clause after just 6 games with the Grizzlies to save just $1.4 million, the lowest amount of any released players, and he never played in the NBA again. And he wasn't even 25 years old. Bell played some more basketball in D-League, Europe, and Argentina before calling it quits in 2016. Wesley Person was a person whose highlights came early. He made the NBA All-Rookie second team. Jokes aside, he was a good role player for Phoenix and Cleveland in the first part of his career. Then, in a span of just 2 full seasons, he changed 4 teams and ended up in Miami. By then, he was averaging just 4 points, and it was decided by the Miami's front office that $1.6 million should be saved. He was amnestied. Person played just 25 more games with the Nuggets and retired after the 2005-2006 season. Calvin Booth. Now, I have no idea how he got to that contract since his best season was 7.5 points and 5 rebounds. He never played a full season, he wasn't a shooting big man or a passing big man or anything, yet somehow his 5.4 rebound season with Seattle netted him a $6 million yearly salary. In 2005, he was a Milwaukee Buck, and after a strong showing of 3 points and 3 rebounds through 17 games, Milwaukee decided to amnesty him. Booth actually played 4 more years in the league for 4 different teams before retiring in 2009. He's currently the president of basketball operations for the Denver Nuggets. Fred Hoiberg. Yes, that former Chicago Bulls head coach. He was a former Bulls player as well. Actually, he had a 10-year career in the NBA as a player. He was nothing more than a role player, in his best season with the Bulls, averaging 9 points and 3.5 rebounds. In 2005, which ended up being his last NBA season, Hoiberg was averaging 5.8 points for the Timberwolves. That wasn't good enough, and he was released to save $1.6 million. Hoiberg never played again in the NBA, but as we all know, for 3-something seasons, was the head coach for the Bulls, and now is a head coach for University of Nebraska. Ron Mercer was a much better player. He averaged double-digit points for the first 5 seasons of his career and even averaged 19.7 points for Chicago back in 2001. Even though he was a valuable player for the Bulls, he was traded to Indiana where he was deemed as a role player. His production declined rapidly, and after 16.8 points with the Bulls, he was now averaging just 4.8 with the Pacers. He then was traded to the Spurs, played a bit with them before being released, and then signed with the Nets, who waived him after just 18 games with the team. That's $1.6 million saved for the Nets and the career ender for Mercer. Jerome Williams. It's funny how the 2005 amnesty clause is called the Allen Houston rule, yet the Knicks didn't even use their clause on Houston himself. In a total Knicks manner, rather than saving almost $40 million, New York opted instead to release forward Jerome Williams to avoid $21.3 million in luxury taxes that would have been due over the next 3 seasons. Well, Williams wasn't anything special. At his best season with Detroit in 2002, he averaged 9 and 9. In New York, he was a bench option averaging 4 points and 4 rebounds, and at the time he was getting paid $6.2 million. So I guess the move made a little sense. Less than 48 hours later, after being released, he announced his retirement from basketball. Doug Christie. One of the better defenders of his era, and not a bad scorer as well. He used to average 16.5 points for the Raptors while providing good defense. In Sacramento, For 5 years, he was one of the best defenders in the league, as he made NBA All-Defensive teams for 4 consecutive years. He was a part of the greatest show on the court. That was until 2005, when he was traded to Orlando. Christie wasn't particularly happy about the trade and soon was sidelined with bone spurs after just 21 games in Orlando. Orlando decided to use the amnesty clause on him and waive his $7.5 million salary. After that, Christie played just 2 more seasons in the league. In each season he played just 7 games and then called it quits in 2007. Christie now is back in Sacramento as an assistant coach for the Kings. McKee, on the other hand, was just an overpriced role player. He won the 6th Man of the Year award back in 2001 with the Sixers. Soon after, he started to fade. In just 3 years, from a player that averaged 12 points and won the award, he became someone who was barely playable and averaging just 2 points per game. Philadelphia waived him and his $5.5 million. After that, he played 2 more seasons with the Lakers, averaging just a point per game. Now, he's the head coach for the Temple University basketball team. Eisley was the backup point guard for 8 NBA teams during his career. His best success came in Utah, where he was backing up John Stockton. Not that it was that necessary since John Stockton was always on the court, but still. When he came to Phoenix in 2003, he was averaging 7 points and 3 assists, but still earning more than $5.2 million. He was waived by Phoenix, returned to Utah for a year, and then had short stops with the Clippers and the Nuggets before calling it a career. After his playing career, he developed quite a career as a coach. He's worked as an assistant for 3 NBA teams already, and now is an assistant coach in Michigan. Derek Anderson had a career year with the Clippers back in 2000. Then he followed it with another good season with the Spurs. And then he got the big money from the Blazers. He was performing okay, averaging double-digit points for them, but not quite worth the money he was getting. In his last season with the Blazers, he played in just 8 of the final 42 games because of injuries. His production was also declining, and soon after the season ended, Anderson became the first player to be waived under the so-called luxury tax amnesty clause. He and his $8.5 million salary. Anderson spent 3 more years in the league as a role player for Houston, Miami, and Charlotte before retiring. He won the championship with the Heat in 2006, so I guess it's all good. And last but not least, Alonzo Mourning. Also a well-known player in NBA circles, mostly as that big man for the Miami Heat. Back in 2002, he missed the whole season of basketball because of a kidney disorder. It was the last season on his deal with the Heat, and after a year without basketball, he signed with the New Jersey Nets. He once again had to deal with complications from his kidney disease, and when he was on the court, he didn't have a big role, so he wanted out. The Nets traded him to Toronto, but he never reported to the team. Toronto waived him under the amnesty clause. At that point, he was earning $5.5 million. Mourning returned to Miami on a minimum salary contract, won a championship, and played 2 more seasons with the Heat before retiring in 2009. He became the first player whose jersey was retired by the Miami Heat and is now in Naismith Memorial and FIBA Basketball Hall of Fame. What a ride it was. So there you go, guys. All 18 players that were amnestied in the first batch of amnesty clauses back in 2005. Most of these players' careers pretty much ended right after getting amnestied. But what do you think? Did the teams make the right decisions at the time by amnestying these players, or should they have amnestied somebody else? Who was your favorite player out of these 18? Please leave your comment down below. Don't forget to leave a like for the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. This was Purple Prince, and I'm out.